How will you bring more quality to the marketplace? How will you bring more convenience to your customer base? How will you connect to those new prospects? Thank you so much for joining me. I am Cornell Jermaine. I want to welcome you. If you're a subscriber, I want to welcome you and thank you for supporting the channel. Listen, if you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you to the show. Today, we're going to talk about the modern customer, what consumers expect in a digital age. Now, as we talk about this subject matter, I want to build a case, but I want to journey through time just a little bit.
Wait a minute, Doc, what are you talking about?
And pull out some elements that will support this case that I'm building for you today. Listen, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, you want to listen closely because I believe there's something that will help you in your journey of success. So let's start our journey in 2017 with a corporation that is familiar to all of us, I believe, and that is Microsoft. Microsoft launched a platform, a digital platform in 2017 called Teams. It was at the forefront of digital platform of its kind, right? But little did they know, and little did we know as consumers, that it was just what we would need here 3 years later. What do I mean 3 years later? Well, 3 years later, March of 2020, the global pandemic happened that we know as COVID-19, which took us all out of the office and back at homes, locked us in, and what do they call it? Shelter in place, right? Hoping that we would have the opportunity to get back out one day and trying to still maintain a job, a career, and keep a business afloat, right? Well, in answer to one of the problems that arose for many organizations and many businesses at that time was Microsoft Teams. It had the ability to keep organizations and groups and departments working interconnected and being able to keep their projects and their business going even in a global pandemic. Now, this is not a commercial or an advertisement or me promoting Microsoft Teams in any way. I'm really highlighting the change of the consumer because what happens typically in pandemics or things that happen that ultimately shake up society is we often look to big business. We often look to the world-class organizations or the well-known or popular or big-time entrepreneurs. What are they doing? What are they saying? But I think we need to put a spotlight on the customer, yes, who just simply spends their money on things that they need and desire, right? I think we need to put a spotlight on them because just as businesses had to change in 2020, people changed in 2020. And in order for us as business owners and entrepreneurs to keep our businesses afloat, and not just keep them afloat, but to arise and go to another level, we have to understand this ever-evolving creature. It's just like when we're children, right? You know what I mean? It's simply evolution, right? Even if a pandemic had not happened, the trajectory of our society would have demanded a service like Teams and some of the others that we know today, right? It would have demanded it because that's just what the age is calling for. But the global pandemic forced it upon us because it was like, okay, everything was stripped at once. There was no opportunity to ease into this thing, you know what I mean, called remote work and virtual reality and all of the things, right? There was no opportunity to ease into it. We were forced into it. And as being forced, we changed, not just as businesses, not just as brands, but as consumers. As we put a pin here in 2017, let's take it back to 1700s. It was a time where some would say life was easy, maybe harder in some ways, but a lot easier in other ways. In this particular time or era, it was not uncommon for families to own a cow. It was not uncommon for families to have a lot of land to live upon, right? And they owned the cow for one of the main reasons for milking the cow, right? They needed milk. They needed milk for their cereals, for their cakes, for whatever else they were doing, right? They needed milk, so they had a cow which provided fresh and quality milk for their families. Beautiful, right? Well, what happened is society or industry began to change, and now we see a revolution called the Industrial Revolution coming upon us. And it forced many of these families from the farmlands into urban areas where now the homes are smaller, they're closer together, which means there's less land, right? Less square footage for your property. You see these families now being forced into a new way of living. What do you think happened with these families, with these individuals who are running households? Did their needs change? No, they still needed milk, but they just didn't have the place or the property to house cattle. So they couldn't just go out and draw their own milk like they used to, or milk their own cow like they used to, right? They had to have another way of getting this quality milk. And that's where we see things and behaviors changing the climate of our consumerism. And I think it gives us a glimpse into not only what we're willing to do as consumers, but how we need to change and alter as business owners. Because what this era gives us a glimpse into, it gives us a glimpse into the time and effort that it takes to do things, right? I don't, maybe you, or maybe some of our parents are watching, some of you know what it takes to go out into the farmland, into the field, and then get the cow and sit beneath or beside the cow and milk it and have all this, I don't even know. I've seen video and footage of it, and it looks like it takes a long time, right? Well, now in this late 1700 era, people are busy. Not only do they not have the land and the property to do it, but they don't have the time to do it. So now they're in need of something. And this brought about a distribution channel that will alter the way families received their milk and dairy for generations. Let's talk about time and effort. We see that in today's society, where now time is valuable and people don't want to put the effort into their purchases anymore. So that means that as business owners, we have to think about the need beforehand. The Industrial Revolution of the 1700s birthed a new industry that people so desperately needed. Although people lived in more developed areas, many of the amenities that we know today, like refrigeration, were not readily available. Matter of fact, I think refrigeration in the 1700s, maybe 30 years out before it would even come into play, right? So that means there was no thought of, as it pertains to a consumer, of being able to take your milk and put it in a refrigerator. So they had to have a service, something that will allow them to get fresh milk as they needed it, right? That's where the milkman comes into play. Yes, the milkman. This was an individual that would go through the neighborhoods and they would meet the consumer at their door. The consumer would come out with their vessels, their jars, their jugs, whatever they had, and the milkman would fill them up with fresh milk from the local farmer. This particular industry evolved over time to be able to now deliver the milk when the families might have been out shopping or having a good time at dinner with their grandparents or whomever. They could leave the milk in what was called the milk chute, which is a door that is right on the side of the house that has this little cubby hole where the milkman would place the glasses of milk, take his money, and close the door. And when the family got home, listen, all they did was open the chute from the inside, take the milk, and they use it as needed, right? This is the sign of a time where now consumer behavior and the expectation of consumers were beginning to change because society and culture demanded it. And it is true of our culture of consumerism today. It's demanding something different. Speaking of time and effort, times have changed. And guess what? The effort that it takes for us as businesses to win a prospect over has changed as well. Because now we're dealing with a new kind of consumer. Let's take a glimpse into what this consumer looks like today. This consumer is about the age from 11 to maybe 42, right? And this consumer has a spending power of $350 billion. This consumer is Generation Y and Generation Z, better known as Millennials and Gen Zs. And I know many of you thinking like, what? They are the #1 consumers in the marketplace today. Research says Generation Z alone make up 40% of today's consumers, leaving only about 60% to split among the other generations like boomers, Generation Joneses, Gen Ys, and Gen X's. If we understand this, we'll understand and get a glimpse into what the modern consumer looks like. Now, you may look at this and you may say, well, my target audience is not Gen Ys and my target audience is not Gen Zs. I get you and I understand where you're coming from, but it's important to understand them because guess what? They are facilitating the experiences of generations before them. Meaning, how many times have you heard a parent say,
well, my son said this one is the best one to buy.
Or a grandparent say,
my granddaughter set it up for me.
What does that mean? That means that these individuals who are now the number one consumers of today, Gen Ys and Gen Zs, are not only facilitating the marketplace experience for generations before them, but they are influencing the consumer behavior of generations before them. I know I highlighted that there's a $350 billion spending power amongst Generation Y and Gen Zs, but that's not the important thing when it comes to this particular video. The important thing is that we bring to light the expectation of this particular consumer. And again, this is not exclusive to Gen Ys and Gen Zs because they are facilitating and influencing the buying power of everyone in their household, everyone in their circle. What is this particular consumer expecting? Not what do they want, what do they expect? That means that if they're going to do business, they said these things have to happen for me in order for me to go in my pocket and to give you my money for a product, service, etc. The first thing they are expecting is quality. Just like in generations past, the 1700s, they had to adjust to a time that was now changing, and so did the farmers of that day. They adjusted because of the need, but the desire was still there, right? They wanted that quality, that freshness. They needed it still. This is what businesses had to come up with, a way for them to do it. And they did it with the milkman. And that is true still for our today's consumer. They want a quality product, but they also want a quality service. If you're one who thinks just because you have a bargain offer that people will flock to it, understand this. The mentality of this modern day consumer says,
just because your prices are low doesn't mean I'm gonna be more interested.
Because the lower the prices, the less quality they have. So what does that mean? In this mentality of today's consumer, cheap equals poor quality. So it's not to say that you can't have sales. It's not to say that you can't offer deals. But if you think just because you're gonna run to the market and just mark yours way lower than the next man and have the cheapest prices just because you're gonna have a flock of people buying from you, you may be sadly mistaken. Now, obviously, when it comes to marketing and strategic designs and putting together plans, there's a market for everybody, right? But overall, when we talk about this consumer, if you're gonna bring them quality, it means that you're gonna provide a service for them or a product for them like none other. And that's what this modern day consumer is looking for. The second thing this modern day consumer is looking for, convenience. Just like in the day of the milkman, right? The convenience was now,
I don't have to go out to the farm or to the barn or wherever and milk my own cow. I can just wait on the milkman to bring it to me.
The same is true today. Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of these things that we look for from a lot of restaurants and places that we frequent, we want to know,
oh, can they bring it to our doorstep?
Right? That they want convenience. They want to know that they can call you and you can bring them their pizza and wings when they need it without them having to interrupt their family time, interrupt the game, or leave their home. People in this modern society want convenience. And if you can figure out how to conveniently offer your product or conveniently serve this group of people, you could make your business more valuable. The third and final thing that this modern day consumer is looking for, connection. And they're looking for connection in three parts. They want to connect emotionally, mentally, ethically. What does that mean? They want to know that you as a brand can relate to their vulnerabilities. They want to know that you as a brand can understand their complexities. And they finally want to know that you and a brand can share in their values. This is probably one of the most crucial things and is most paramount when it comes to establishing a business that could be successful in this modern age, right? They want connection. And if you can connect with them emotionally, mentally, and ethically, then you have won a prospect and now possibly gained a loyal customer. So many of you may be wondering why all this conversation about the milkman and the modern customer and all this stuff. Well, when we talk about the modern customer, we're talking about someone who is very keen on quality when it comes to their purchase, very keen on convenience, and most importantly, they're keen on connection, just like I mentioned here before. This whole idea of milk delivery, well, guess what? There are farmers right now today in the US who have reverted back to times past, where they now have a farm-to-table experience just for consumers who appreciate quality, convenience, and connection. They have an experience where you can get milk, eggs, cheese delivered right to your door, just like in the 1800s. Crazy! Who would have thought? Well, guess what? That's because this modern day consumer, they're concerned about quality. So as opposed to giving their dollars to big manufacturers and conglomerates for a product that they're not sure what has been happened to it and how it's been handled or dealt with in the manufacturing process, they'd rather give their dollars to a local farmer who can go to their farm, get their milk, and deliver it right to their doorstep. They want quality. Secondly, they want convenience. This is the convenience. They don't have to go to the store. They can go on their apps. All these services that we use are readily available. These farmers, these new age farmers are doing this today, where people can go online and order their delivery services and get it conveniently dropped at their doorstep. But most importantly, they pride themselves on connection. They now can give to a local farmer knowing in their heart that they are supporting a community-driven organization. That money they're giving to that local farmer is gonna now circulate into that community, ultimately building the economic infrastructure of that said city or state. Listen, these are things that the modern consumer is looking for. We're talking about quality, convenience, and lastly, connection, emotionally, mentally, and ethically. I know many of you are thinking like, okay, this whole connection, mentally, emotionally, ethically, and all this connection sounds like a marriage. Well, yeah, that's kind of like what it is, in the sense that a person wants to know not only what they're buying, but who they're buying it from. And this is important to understand because, like a marriage, there are millions of people with billions of spending power perusing through the marketplace of life, looking for brands that can connect with them, looking for brands that can understand their complexities, brands that can relate to their vulnerabilities, brands that share their values. These are very important things that we as business owners must understand if we are going to understand and cater to this modern day consumer. What are you going to do with this information? How will you bring more quality to the marketplace? How will you bring more convenience to your customer base? How will you connect to those new prospects? And if you really want to up the ante, you'll be like Microsoft and create a product, service, or platform that is there to aid them before the demand arises. I hope this has helped you as an entrepreneur, business owner, or brand. Listen, I'm Cornell Jermaine. I thank you so much. Please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hit it. And by all means, subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you back here, same place, same time next week. Take care.